Good afternoon, beautiful, beautiful souls. Today we are going to talk about complex trauma, stratification, and how they directly correlate with the partnerships, the relationships, and every step that we take along our journey of self-discovery. And most importantly, we're trying to find our way and our path on this journey of life. Welcome back to Wisdom Discerns. If this is your first time tuning into my channel, my name is Nicole and I am a seer. I am an inspirational, transformative life coach, and most importantly, I am a child of God just as well as you are too. So number one on my list, y'all, is complex trauma. And when we think of trauma, that is an event that happened in your life that affected you mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, financially. See, the things that we deal with and the things that we are exposed to in life, that's trauma. It's all trauma. And the way the brain processes the trauma is contingent upon, first of all, who you are, where you're at in your life, and if it places other traumatic events from your past into remission. The definition of stratification is the arrangement or classification of something into different groups. So when you hear the word stratification, it is interconnected with the social ladder, whether or not you came from a two-family household, for example. If you were exposed to adverse childhood experiences, if your parents are made six figures, if you were able to obtain a traditional college education, the opportunities that were readily available to you in your younger years, as well as the opportunities that are available for you in your adult life. The second definition of stratification is the placing of seeds close together in layers to persevere them or to help them germinate. Think about it. If you hear germination, it's interchangeable with mutation. If we're looking at any type of germ, disease, we all come in contact with so many different things on a daily basis. But it has the ability to mutate. And when you think of stratification and how it speaks about the seed and how seeds are placed closely together, that's complex trauma. Because if you look at the status quo and the statistics that are placed upon certain classes of people, it shows you the separation that was there and how the seeds that are planted, they have the ability to mutate and grow and develop. And at that point, they are passed down from generation to generation, resulting in a cycle, right, of repeating cycles. If you think about that cycle of repeating cycles, that shows you how you can have a family and you can say, okay, the grandfather was in prison, the father was in prison, the uncles were in prison, the cousins were in prison, the brothers were in prison. You see the repeating cycle? Do you see the direct connection of the chains that are not only placed upon the mind, but the chains that's placed upon the mind that is passed down through the seed, through not only reproduction, but it's also connected to the environment, not just the environment that you were birthed in, but also the environment that you grew up in. Because even if you remove a specific class of an individual and place them into a whole nother social class, which is on that ladder, that social ladder, which is the first definition of stratification. The separation of different people is the separation versus the segregation. So if one class is segregated and in bondage, and the mind is placed with chains on it, that means that your belief system, your goals, the steps that you are willing to take, they will immediately be halted, because you are going to move based upon the things that you are exposed to, as well as the opportunities that are present in front of you. But if you do not have a solid source where you can say, I'm going to draw my inspiration from this individual, or I have this certain sector of a community that I lean upon for support, you're going to continue to remain within bondage. You're going to continue to dwell and grow. And whereas you are developing in your age, your mind is being restricted. You cannot develop mentally, emotionally, spiritually, if you are not able to identify what's going on in your life. So now when we look at the stratification, the complex trauma, the reality that these things and these seeds and how they are placed together, many of the people that we are around are doing the same things. So their opinions and their lifestyle, it's very invasive. It subliminally begins to rewrite not only your subconscious mind, but it also rewrites your conscious mind. At this point, you are completely oblivious to the reality that you are programmed. I want to go to Proverbs chapter 1, verse 33. But whoever listens to me will dwell secure and will be at ease without dread of disaster. Depending upon who your first teachers were, many of them already had the seed of fear placed in their core. They naturally will pass down that same seed of fear that will plant an our core. So if the stomach is the second mind, right? It's the things that we consume. Now, whether or not it's something that you are eating, or whether or not it's the seed that is planted in your belly, those very things are going to harvest, right? The harvest is when the seed begins to develop and it comes to the adult. It's the fruit. For example, now you are able to reap your harvest and you can pick the fruit. Okay. Now, if those seeds were poison and they were toxic and they were planted in your core, in your belly, they will begin to hatch and harvest. So stumble upon the realization that we are surrounded by a generation, multiple generations actually, of adult children. Let's go to Psalm 34, verse 4. I sought the Lord and he delivered me from all my fears. See, God wants us to place our fear upon him. Despite your spiritual beliefs, we have to have a space that's within us where we are comfortable and confident enough to say, I will not worry. I'm going to take this thing that is burdening me. I'm going to take this issue, this trial. I'm going to step on the head of the serpent that continuously plants false data into my vessel. It's that moment when you say, my faith will deliver me. See, if you believe that you will be delivered from the false information that's planted in you. See, absolutely, it brings us to this space when it says, I am not my adversities. I am not who my family was. I am not my past. To allow myself to believe and to conform to the status quo that is based upon and placed upon a generation. Just because I went through does not mean that that is the determination of my future. Although when you look at stratification in the social ladder, opportunities that were present with your family, as well as the opportunities that's present with you, you will realize that no matter what barriers or blockages or hindrance or belief system that was established with your forefathers or your first teachers, you have the ability to step over those obstacles. But it first starts with the ability to believe that you can. With the complex trauma, the stratification, it will bring you to the types of relationships that we typically have. You see, so if the seeds are planted upon each other, and we're in certain environments, people tend to date, or their friends come from the same background as them. Whereas others, they tend to step out of that aspect of life, and they intentions is to date people from other social classes. But many times they're rejected. They're not only rejected because of their verbiage, they can be rejected because their parents, they didn't come from a two-parent household. They can be rejected because their mind hasn't developed yet to understand the separation of social classes. They can be rejected just by how they look. They can be rejected from the texture of their hair. They can be rejected from the color of their skin. They can be rejected based on the level of education that they received and where they gained their education. They can be rejected from the area and community that they grew up in. So see, when we look at this stratification, the complex trauma, as well as the partnerships, it will bring you to the realization that many people do not have a choice but to continue to operate within the same division, within the same level of growth that their forefathers had, that their first teachers had, that the other people that's from their community have the ability to operate within. They don't have a choice because most times they will be rejected by the other classes. Not just because many of these classes are cliquey, that's a perspective, but they will be rejected because they was not birthed into a certain level of social opportunity. Let's go to 2 Timothy 1 verse 7. For God gave us a spirit not of fear, but of power and love and self-control. Now riddle me this one. How are people able to operate and function with self-control if those seeds aren't placed in their anatomy? If the seeds aren't placed there, we are going to always show up as a product of our environment. Now, whether that product of our environment means that we may show up a bit meek and naive, that product of our environment can also mean that we think fast, that we move fast, that we walk fast. That product of our environment can mean that we look and find and create opportunities. That product of our environment can also reflect the fact that if a traumatic event was to arise, sometimes people aren't able to handle that traumatic event because they are a product of their environment. So when you look at the stratification, and how it directly correlates with every aspect of our life, it's then that you have the ability to step back. You can view your life. You can view the level that you were birthed in, and you can also visualize the steps that you need to take to lead you towards that path of not only self-discovery or self-mastery, okay? Because how can you master yourself when we are constantly developing? You can't master something that's constantly changing. I mean, you can learn it. So I feel like maybe that's another lie that's told to us. He who masters thyself can never be mastered. See, we will never master ourselves, nor will we ever be mastered, because we are constantly changing. It's as you continue to develop, you reach new heights, and that's where your wisdom comes in at. Yep, that's Solomon. Solomon asked God for wisdom, right? So if Solomon asked God for wisdom, maybe Solomon knew that he was constantly changing. That as the world changes, which is a reflection of us, if the world is constantly changing every day, so are we. So we master ourselves. That means what? That we have reached the end? So when we ponder upon the complex trauma, the interpersonal connection to our native roots, to the beginning. See, those roots are passed down to us from our forefathers. So it really doesn't matter what roots are planted inside of you. The roots of our forefathers, they're birthed into our soul. This is why our souls are individually handed out. Not two of us. Two of us will never be the same. And see, that's another topic of partnerships, where they say that, you know, in some partnerships, we have divine partnerships, we have karmic partnerships, we have twin flame partnerships. But if God individually created each one of us, how could one person be the same? How can you create an exact replica of the same? See, you can give birth to 4 children with the same mother and the same father, and all 4 of those children will look different, they will talk different, they will think different, they will act different, because they are different, right? Despite the seeds that are planted, as well as the seeds that have developed, we have the ability to de-root and remove those seeds, those blockages, those barriers that has grown and developed in us. Just as weeds, certain garden plants are very invasive, where they come in and they dominate the entire garden. The entire garden will be dominated by certain plants. It's the same thing for us as a human. When you're dealing with the human anatomy, in order for us to begin the de-rooting process, we have to identify and acknowledge the placement of these issues, and realize that a lot of times these programs are operating in the background, which is not just the subconscious mind. That's one piece of it. But when it's operating in the background, it's the subconscious mind, it's the roots. See, if you are disconnected from the root, that means that you are birthed into a wayward lifestyle. On that note, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. Again, my name is Nicole. And if nobody told you that they love you today, remember, I love you. God loves you. And most importantly, every day is another step in the direction of understanding self. On that note, I'm going to sign off, and I will catch you in the next one.